Let's talk about the Eagles' first regular season game that left a lot to be desired, except for Jalen Carter's game-saving play, while the Rook registered the most pressures by a defensive tackle in Week 1. Plus, the Birds added a former first-round pick with linebacker Nakobe Dean set to miss significant time. How bad is James Bradberry's concussion? And head coach Nick Sirianni's one major regret. But first, let's run it. Hey guys, alright, so this video is going to recap the opener, where the Eagles arrived in Foxborough seeing a little calm before the storm, except it was literally calm before the storm, because the weather was certainly an issue, but more on that in a second. The downpour didn't put a damper on Jalen Hurts' fit though, with Mr. Breed of One himself in a completely different league of his own, and I certainly would never try that. Although AJ Brown kept up appearances for the opener, and well, the other Brown, Sydney, was all business. However, my favorite fit I saw all day was probably E-Rock's as he was at Gillette Stadium, simply to, pay respect to Tom Brady since it was TB12 day and all in New England. As the GOAT was in the building, getting recognized, and while that was cool to see pregame, along with the expectations of how starting right guard Cam Jurgens would fare, I didn't exactly like to see Aaron Siposs before the game, but I do agree with Outside the Birds who shared afterward, considering the amount of flack I gave Aaron Siposs, I've got to give him credit for his performance Week 1, where he averaged 49.3 yards per punt, which was one of the better marks across the league. So good for him. I really hope he keeps it up and that we see more of it. However, one of the things I would have loved to see, but we didn't get to, is running back Rashaad Penny in action, since it was announced before kickoff that Penny was a healthy scratch along with other inactives like Tanner McKee, Mario Goodrich, Eli Ricks, Tyler Steen, Moro Ojomo, and Albert O. Yeah, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Yet, despite how upsetting that might have been, Brandon Lee Gowton may be onto something when he said Rashaad Penny can't get hurt if the Eagles don't play him. Hey, not the worst idea if we're simply trying to just make it through the season. Yes, we all know the consistent injury concerns and issues Penny's had, but I felt like this was a mistake from the Eagles. Although they decided to roll with only 3 running backs in Kenny Gainwell, DeAndre Swift, and Boston Scott. Okay, which was curious to say the least, given the torrential downpour to start the game and the fact that I think everyone realized early on having a rushing attack might be super helpful. But I think that's where we just trust head coach Nick Sirianni and the rest of the staff because they obviously have a better pulse on the team than we do.
We can't be expected to understand him. He's so far above us.
Alright, regardless of how you feel, the Birds had more than enough firepower as Jalen Hurts and co took the field in the fire all-white unis, ready to make a statement and definitely fired up the squad with a little pregame pep talk, as Fletcher Cox did the same with the defensive group before it was time to enjoy the show. Remember, like the one that Jalen talked about from his SI cover interview when he said, "The fans are hungry, but I don't think anybody's as hungry as me, so enjoy the ride." And I'm not gonna lie, it felt incredible to have meaningful football back. Starting out with essentially the Kenny G show, with the 24-year-old RB getting touches on 8 of the first 14 plays in the opening drive. His best play being a 16-yard run up the left side behind really good blocking and getting the Birds into Patriot territory, followed by an eventual Hurts quarterback draw on 3rd and 11 where he was able to pick up 14 for the first down, which at this point everything was looking solid in a position to score, moving the football until offensive coordinator Brian Johnson seemed to get timid or uncreative, and then the Philly offense decided a let's not block Matt Judon play would work, resulting in a sack and forcing a field goal from Jake Elliott to make it 3-0. Okay, so not so bad of a start, although it would have been nice to punch it in for 6. But who cares, the Patriots offense came onto the field looking to answer even though they were playing without 3 starting offensive linemen, yet they seemed to have no trouble getting a push and running the football, including Zeke Elliott, who made the most of his first touch as a Patriot, running for 11 yards into Philly territory. But then, just whenever it seemed like they'd continue marching down the field, rookie Jalen Carter made his presence known on his first NFL regular season snap, very much like he did for his first preseason snap, forcing an incompletion and bringing up 3rd down. But it wasn't just the young dude making plays, with Big Play Slay living up to the nickname on the very next one, as he picked off Mac Jones and was able to navigate traffic en route to a 70-yard pick 6, putting the Eagles up 10-0, and leaving Belichick to ponder the whole, man, when it rains, it really does pour. Except it actually got worse. After the ensuing kickoff, Zeke took a screen pass that looked kind of promising until Big Jordan Davis got a bare paw on the ball, forcing the fumble, and Zach Cunningham recovered, ultimately causing Belichick to lose whatever patience he had left. Thankfully for Philly, Hurts and the offense were able to capitalize on the shortened field, converting for a score to Devontae Smith on a dot from Jalen, with the to QB, showcasing that he's still got that laser-like accuracy, and a really cool moment for the Slim Reaper since he and his girlfriend just celebrated the birth of their baby girl Kysey on Saturday, which was why Smitty went for the rock the cradle celly. So congrats to them and welcome to the girl dad life, Devontae. Unfortunately, that was literally the last bright spot for the offense in the first half, going 3 and out on their next 4 drives, leaving Brendan Deeg to paint an accurate depiction of what changed from the first quarter to the second quarter. Also marking the first time in Hurts' career that he'd had 4 straight 3 and outs in a game. Look, blame whoever you want to, but the play calling wasn't helping. For example, like on this 3rd and 10 where we decide, hey, let's just run a little draw to Boston Scott because that'll work.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't, and neither did several other instances leading to 3 and outs. However, AJ argued after the game that it was Belichick and the different looks that he was giving that caused them problems, saying, I don't think we weren't prepared, but Belichick was just throwing so many curveballs and it was hard to adjust. Okay, perhaps that was the case, but the New England offense didn't exactly fare much better, being forced to punt 3 straight times before finally finding a glaring weakness in the middle of the field, where they returned time and time again. As Mac Jones found Hunter Henry for a score on an absolute dime, and then later Kendrick Bourne beat James Bradberry in coverage for a score to make it 16-14 at halftime, which after the play, Bradberry appeared to think he had safety help, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but it certainly was enough for some fans like Kendall Beck to say, Justin Evans is not a starting safety. Howie Roseman will be trading for a safety before the trade deadline. Okay, or what if he just went with rookie Sidney Brown? Of course, the Rook only played special teams, but he made sure to let his presence be known, absolutely lighting up Marcus Jones during a punt return. So I'll continue to say I'm in favor of getting this dude on the field so that he can make plays and flash that insane athleticism. But back to the game. It was about at this point where I think a lot of us were genuinely concerned. New England had most of the momentum and got the ball to start the second half. Thankfully, the Desai defense got a stop, and Jalen and co finally remembered how to get a first down again, while moving the ball down the field and connecting with A.J. Brown as well as Quez Watkins. However, just whenever it looked like the Birds would threaten to score, tackle Jordan Mailata was called for a hold on this run here by Hurts. I don't know, what do y'all think? It's pretty weak to me. Unfortunately, that pushed the Birds way back, so even after a couple completions, Philly had to settle for a 56-yard field goal by Jake Elliott. Although perhaps there was a makeup call for the holding penalty on Mailata, since New England's Hunter Henry was called for a hold here, and I can't for the life of me find much, if anything, on this play. But I won't complain because that forced another Patriots punt, and once again, Jalen got the offense moving, finding Smitty on a couple passes before reaching the fourth quarter, at which point, shockingly, as James Palmer pointed out, DeAndre Swift had 0 carries and Dallas Goedert didn't have a single catch. Okay, I mean, come on, that can't happen. Fortunately, I guess that did the trick because just a couple plays later, Swift got a handoff for 3 yards, and then Goedert was targeted on a poor throw from Jalen. But honestly, Hurts seemed to be off most of the game, missing Goedert on a couple different occasions when he was wide open, and then just forced it to him on a 3rd down. Once again, causing Jake Elliott to come in and salvage 3 points, connecting on a 48-yard field goal to go up 22-14, which was good news to take the lead by 8 points. The downside was that right at this point, Nakobe Dean was seen walking to the locker room with a right foot injury and ended up being done for the night, where after getting an MRI today, it was confirmed that Dean will be out for about a month with a foot injury. So GM Howie Roseman signed former first-round pick Rashaad Evans, who played with the Falcons last season, recording 159 tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and 3 fumble recoveries. And as John McMullen pointed out, he ranked as the number 52 off-ball linebacker among 81 qualifying players. So I don't just hate the signing, but I assume it'd mean Nicholas Morrow will be elevated for the practice squad, and Christian Ellis may slide in next to Cunningham, since both of those guys know the Desai defense much better. Although once again, Ellis missed a couple tackles in the game, so definitely a little uneasy about the whole situation in the linebacker room. But how about you guys? Bill O'Brien and the Pats offense certainly noticed that and keyed off the loss during the game, moving down the field with ease in the fourth quarter, continually hammering that soft zone. But finally, Hassan Reddick was able to pressure Mac Jones to force an incompletion on 4th down, giving the ball back to the offense, which Brian Johnson looked to capitalize, dialing up a deep shot to A.J. Brown, where Hurts dropped one in for Swole Batman, and it was initially ruled a completion. Alright, I'll admit, it was arguable. However, the Birds hurried up and ran a play, except apparently you can challenge plays after the ball's snapped now, with Belichick spiking the challenge flag when it appeared a little too late. But they ended up reviewing it, and eventually the catch was reversed to an incompletion. Personally, I think that was the wrong call. I know it was close, but I thought it should have been a catch, since to me it was inconclusive and shouldn't have been overturned. Oh well, that seemed to reignite the Jalen to AJ connection as the two hooked up for completions of 23 and 15 yards, although once again, the drive stalled, forcing Jake the Great to come back out for 3, this time converting from 51 yards out to make it 25-14, which QB1 liked, but he kind of didn't.
Give a lot of credit to Jake Elliott. I don't like him kicking, but he showed up and he made big time big time plays all night for us. That was huge. That was huge.
Okay, yeah, that was huge. In fact, Elliott's performance marked the first time since 1960 that an Eagles kicker made 2 field goals of 50-plus yards in the second half of a game. And Jake is also the Eagles' all-time leader in 50-plus yard field goals. So Jake's a stud, no doubt, but unfortunately that didn't put the game out of reach, with New England scoring a touchdown in under 2 minutes after Kendrick Bourne beat Slay on an out-and-up move, and then Jalen ran a designed quarterback run, coughing up the ball immediately, giving the ball back to the Pats. But thankfully the D stood tall. Wait. Okay. Credit to Josh Sweat and Jordan Davis for combining for the first Eagles sack of the game, giving the Birds one more chance to run out the clock. But shoddy play calling put the Eagles in the 4th and 2 situation where Brian Johnson dialed up a slant to Devontae that never had a chance, turning the ball over and allowing Mac Jones one last shot. And it didn't exactly look good with Mike Gesicki being inexplicably wide open, giving Belichick's crew plenty of time to not worry about the clock. But then the game was flipped on its head when Mac Jones started to get pressure before Jalen Carter was able to bring down the QB with one arm, recording his first NFL sack and forcing New England to use their last timeout. And the bread man was asked after the game about that play, saying, "It was just time for somebody to make a play, so I did." Except there was still time for one more play, with it being 4th and 11 at Philly's 20-yard line, and at first it appeared like Jones had a completed pass along the sideline to set up a likely upset, but upon closer examination, it was clearly and thankfully not a catch, resulting in a turnover on downs, securing the Eagles' first victory, moving them to 1-0. Okay, so the game was no doubt not pretty, but like Jalen said,
And winning is the only thing that matters.
that's true, and the quarterback definitely had his defense to thank for after bailing him out, which is exactly what he did according to Josh Tolentino after the game. I would say that was probably the worst win I've seen, especially because the Eagles were negative 141 in total yards in the win, which is the worst margin of total yards in a season-opening victory since 1940. I guess the positive way of looking at it is that you can only go up from here, but let's be honest, there were several areas of concern, like Dallas Goedert only registering 1 target and not a single catch, something Sirianni admittedly regretted after the game, saying that absolutely cannot happen. But that wasn't the only regret he shared during his presser.
I'll definitely reevaluate some of the preseason stuff next year. I know they played the first 2 years that we were here. They only played 1 series against the Jets in 2022. Maybe I should have played them, a series or 2 this preseason, and I already wrote that in my notes. And I'm constantly self-evaluating myself, and and I'm not promising anything. And I know y'all will remember this conversation and play it, and that's okay. But I have to, I'll reevaluate that, and second thought, if I had to do it over again right now, I would say, I would have played the starters 1 or 2 drives in the preseason.
I mean, that's a little surprising to hear Sirianni say that, but like he mentioned, we have seen the offense in action in past years during the preseason. So it was something I think all of us were curious about. How would the group do? And as we saw, there was plenty of rust and timing issues, among other things. Plus, the coordinators in Brian Johnson and Sean Desai left a little to be desired. Now, I know it's just 1 game and only week 1, so honestly, I'm not too worried, but I do think we need to see a lot more in a lot of areas. Yet there were a couple bright spots in Jordan Davis, who recorded 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, half a sack, 1 quarterback hit, and 1 forced fumble, as well as Davis's counterpart, who we kind of already mentioned, Jalen Carter, also shining, registering at least 7 pressures, multiple quarterback hits, 1 sack, and frequently being double or even triple teamed during the game. Yeah, and personally, I'd say Jalen was the best player on the defense last night. In fact, maybe in the entire NFL. Okay, maybe that's a bit dramatic. But as Thomas Peterson shared, JC had the most pressures by a defensive tackle in week 1, and the most pressures by any rookie defensive tackle in a single game in over 5 years. So probably not a stretch to call him the MVP, although I guess you could go with Jake Elliott since he was a perfect 4 for 4, and without him, I highly doubt we win that game. But curious to know who your MVP of the game was, and let me know what your biggest win and biggest loss of the game was. For me, it's probably the 2 losses in Dean, like I already mentioned, and James Bradberry, with the All-Pro currently in concussion protocol, and given the short week, it might be tough for him to get back on the field. So Josh Jobe better get ready. All right, overall, I think I'd give the team about a C+ for that game, but hopefully they can right some wrongs and replicate the performance from last season when we hosted Minnesota, since I think we all pretty much remember the 24/7 beatdown that the Birds put on Kirk Cousins and the Vikes, although they're going to come in with a little extra motivation having lost to Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. I'm not too concerned because I think we can get everything cleaned up that we need to, but will be interesting to see the moves that the team makes on the roster, possibly elevating guys from the practice squad, but at least we're 1-0. This has been the Philly Special.